Hi, welcome to Zelf on the Shelf. I'm Tanner, and today...
I'm Kelly. Oh, I should have done the British accent. And I'm Samantha.
This is Samantha, of course. All right, take 3.
Zelf on the Shelf.
Today we are joined by my good friend Kelli Case, the fabulous, wise... what are all the words that you like to have to describe you? Kelli is my personal guru and expert on permaculture, mindfulness, philosophy generally, wellness. She's trying to help
Wellness?
Wellness?
Okay.
Yeah, no, that's Jared. Getting my microbiome in order. Today, Kelli taught me that you have more bacterial cells on your body than you have human cells. You're just a living, breathing
what you're made
ecosystem.
Up of 10 to 1. There's 10 microbial cells for every one human cell that you are. So it's not just like on you and in you. It's like that's what you are altogether. So
wild.
It's crazy. Yeah,
Wild. All right. Well, we're not even talking about that today. Well, that'll be a different video. Today we're going to be talking about nonviolent communication. It was something that we mentioned in a previous video and we got a lot of questions on. Kelli happens to be a student
of nonviolent communication. I'm passionately studying it right now.
She does courses here in Salt Lake City, and I've been to one of them, and I'm looking forward to the rest because it really is...
a summer workshop series of all studying together.
Sweet.
Yeah.
One of the questions we get most often is how to talk with family and friends who are in the church, in a way that's safe and helpful, because it's really easy when you leave a belief system to feel a lot of pain and want that pain validated, and finding that the people who you have trusted to give you that validation are not willing or able to understand you in that situation. And lots of times it can create a lot of contention and strife. And we Mormons are so... afraid, so avoidant of confrontation. We everything is right. Contention is of the devil, so that to us means no confrontation whatsoever.
Yeah.
And if I'm understanding what you're saying, is that confrontation can be good and important and methodical in a way that can actually help facilitate good things.
An important point is that conflict is inevitable, but how we respond to conflict is up to us. And so we can respond really aggressively with violent confrontation. We can respond by being very neglectful and avoidant, which is also just as problematic for different reasons. And then hopefully we can find a way to communicate compassionately and facilitate loving relationships.
And that's really hard when you have a wounded ego and you know you're in the right, and you're like, oh, if people would just take a minute to understand, then we wouldn't be having this. And so it's kind of hard to be like, oh, I'll be the bigger person and try to be the compassionate one or whatever.
Yeah.
But really, if you can do that, it will help things, so why not?
Yeah, well, that's one of the things that I love so much about nonviolent communication, is that it is empowering to you, the practitioner, and you don't have to have anyone else cooperating or practicing it with you for you to be able to get the benefit. And it really makes you feel better about your interactions and your contributions to relationships and dynamics and things like that. So
I love that.
Yeah.
There's an actual formula to it, yeah?
Well, and actually it's not a formula because it can be used in a lot of different ways. But there's 4 basic components, which is observations, feelings, needs, and requests.
Okay. What are the differences?
Those different components should be applied to a specific communication interaction, instead of thinking of trying to apply it to you always or you never, a vague dynamic that you've had maybe with your parents since childhood. Instead, it's bringing it into a specific interaction, this person came in the kitchen and got a glass of milk and said these words, and from there, you apply nonviolent communication to facilitate specific interactions better. To just start off, just to give a simple explanation of the distinction between those 4 parts, because nonviolent communication is all about, I think of it as breathing oxygen into interactions and breathing oxygen into our relationships. And a lot of times these different components are compressed together, and each of the different components is as opposed to something else. Well, so observations as opposed to evaluations or judgments, for example. So the 4 components could be Observation, I haven't eaten in 12 hours. Feeling, I feel hungry. Need is, I need food. And then request could be like, will you help me cook dinner, for example. So that's an example of how 4 of those are very different. But a lot of times when we get into a moment where our needs aren't being met, it just like comes out as an explosion.
Yeah.
Or it gets imploded inward.
In the workshop I went that you did the other day, I thought that was really cool, breaking down the differences between needs and the way we go about obtaining our needs. I forgot the word that you used. Strategies. Because when you're feeling like a lot of emotion, everything feels like needs, and you're spinning your wheels trying to create a narrative about why your needs aren't being met, rather than identifying the ways that the strategy, like strategizing with somebody else to help you both meet your needs.
Yeah, totally. Yep, exactly. So needs versus strategies. So that would be an example. Strategies are like wants and desires or fears and aversions. Let's say you have 2 needs, like I need food and I need connection. Then the strategy to meet those needs might be like having dinner with your partner, right? But when you get really fixated on like, I want to go to this restaurant at this time, then that's when the level of conflict happens at the level of strategy. So we have differing strategies to meet our needs, but very often we are sharing the same needs. Like, I also need connection, I also need food, and I love you and care about you, so let's work it out and figure out a way.
I think that's what resonates most about this with me, is because in, relationships we have with anybody, usually we have more in common with them than we think.
Yeah.
And yet, because of our differing strategies and, a whole assortment of things, of paradigms, we add so much conflict to our lives, when if we could just focus on those similarities, we'd find out that, we could live much more harmoniously, including with, believing friends, believing family.
Yeah, definitely. It's so true.
So maybe can we walk through an example of something like that, like as relating to a Mormon faith crisis? How can someone use these
so
principles?
So let's distinguish. So there's observations versus evaluations, which is just noticing exactly what happened as opposed to my judgment that I'm attaching to it. And one of my favorite quotes is from J. Krishnamurti, which says that observation without judgment is the highest form of human intelligence. And it's true, because when we are meditating, we're learning how to observe without labeling and attaching all of our thoughts and like constant chatter about it. And so in a lot of ways, nonviolent communication totally is like this, like, it's really hard for it to not also become like a spirituality, because the concepts are so like zen and woke. He's a really woke guy. Okay, so observations versus evaluations, and then there's feelings versus thoughts, and then there's needs versus strategies, and then there are requests versus demands. So, with that in mind, now let's come up with something.
Okay, let's do it. So, you
want to do a Mormon one?
Yeah, let's do a Mormon one.
Let's do a Mormon one.
That's what these people are here for, I guess. Let's do it. So, I've recently left the church. As you can tell, the light has left my eyes. Jesus cannot be found on my countenance any longer. Insert our most vile YouTube commenters' insults about my appearance. Now, you're my believing.
Wait, let's dial it down and let's have it be no. Well, because so part of practicing nonviolent communication is trying to keep it like the intensity low when we're role playing, because like a 10 or higher, it actually is really hard to access those really intense emotions. It's easier to access like a 6 or lower. So instead of being your mom, which would be like a really intense emotion, I could be like maybe your older sister. Would that be like a little less charged?
That feels
right. In some ways, I really am.
You really are. Okay, so we have a conflict maybe about
the church.
Yeah, you keep sending me materials to try to strengthen my testimony. I think it's an infringement of my boundaries.
Okay.
And maybe you think I'm infringing on your boundaries by merely existing. I don't know. Sorry, I'm doing exactly what we're trying to getting in a jab at. Sorry. All right, let's do this.
Okay.
I don't know how fleshed out this role play needs to be.
We're just going to go into
Does this feel like the mission again? Preach my gospel?
Totally. Every time I'm a returned missionary too. You're a returned missionary.
Remind me where you served?
Virginia.
That's right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I always feel like I'm back in Preach My Gospel days.
Kelly was for sure the like assistant sister, the one who's like, I could get this mission in shape if you would but let me.
And also like the I don't know, like hippie, rebellious, like doing things like a little bit shady, but still doing
shady
it.
Shady, going by the Spirit.
But going by the Spirit of the law, for sure.
Okay, so role play. Let's do this.
Okay. Tanner, I have sent you 5 emails with really inspiring, beautiful articles from the New Era and the Friend and the Ensign, and you haven't responded to any of them.
Yeah, I think that's all bullshit. So if you could stop sending me bullshit, that would be great. Take your trite, put it in your pipe and smoke it.
Actually, you're not showing the family that you're important to us by ignoring my emails, and Mom has her feelings hurt too because you haven't been responding to her texts with scriptures, and that shows that you are just selfish and you don't care about anyone but yourself.
Well, it's only because I've had a very good example from you guys who can't listen to me but who are always sending me shit. If Mom really wanted to talk to me, she'd ask me about my life rather than just sending me scriptures.
If you don't respond to Mom's texts or my emails, then I don't think we're going to invite you to family dinner on Friday nights anymore.
Well, I didn't want to go anyway. Your brisket sucks.
If you don't respond by tonight, then we won't. I can't even think.
And if you try to send me another one, you are cut out.
Okay.
So that wasn't. How was that? Was that nonviolent? Did we do a good job?
It's extremely violent.
Yeah.
How did it feel in your body?
Tense. Even faking it, like, I find myself like.
Mm-hmm. How about this? Was it familiar or unfamiliar?
Familiar. Because again, like that's the immediate response. Mm-hmm. My ego's been wounded. I want to lash out to feel a sense of control.
Yeah, exactly. So that was like an overacting poorly on my part. You're a good actor.
Oh,
but,
bless you.
Like example of violent communication that's actually very habitual. We're all very used to communicating in this way. It's the way that society operates is on this like lower level type of communication.
And if we don't say it, we certainly think it. And I certainly will say it to other people, bitch about it later.
Totally.
But
Yeah, exactly. So if we're going to start practicing life enriching communication, it really has to become a practice. Nonviolent communication is sometimes called a language of life. And it really, really is like learning a new language. And the way, so you can, like this video, for example, is discussing the concepts. But if you really are passionate about learning this and starting to develop the skill and bring it into your life, it has to go from a concept in your head to an experience in your body.
Love that.
And that is just by like slowly starting to practice it and bring it into your relationships. But being aware of how much like that violent communication feels bad in your body, the life enriching language feels good in your body. So
one of the biggest, this is kind of tangential, but like one of the biggest things coming out of Mormonism is realizing how much my brain and my body have been disconnected. Where I'm very cerebral and have like no idea what's going down here because I just shove the emotions down, hold them in my stomach, and learning to like develop that awareness and presence in the body, realizing like how my thoughts and feelings are all connected, and that this separation that I've experienced is like not good for me.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's a hard shift to make. Like you said, it's like learning a new language and learning to communicate with your own body. It's tough.
Totally. Like psychology would just say that's integrating your inner child, and just like the integration is like the whole point of it all. And but like all shame-based, especially Christian religions that are shame around sexuality and like sex negative, are going to have that like big discord between your head and your body. Like,
totally. Because you're taught that like some things are bad, so you're constantly trying to disassociate.
Like, how is that possible? Like, it's crazy. Yeah.
So where did we go wrong, and how could we redo that? using the
Cool.
nonviolent communication
Cool.
formula.
So observation versus evaluation. Observation is all about what a camera could pick up on the video and audio. So it's like, he walked into the room, sat down next to me, said these words, said, "Why haven't you responded to mom's email?" or to my email. And then I said, and so it's learning how to take away all of our judgments that we put into things.
Mm-hmm. And it's hard to do that.
Yeah.
Because once you start doing it, like you were saying earlier, it's easy to interject emotional perceptions or
absolutely.
projections onto the other person, even in the language we use to describe their actions. Like, instead of saying, she said this, she yelled this, or got angry. And it's like, well, that's...
Right.
It kind of depends on your perspective.
Right, exactly. And like I was saying earlier about meditation, like in general, most of us are really bad at just observing without putting a thought on things. So it really is a practice learning how to just observe. But another important point about observation is that when we meditate, we go and we activate like our executive functioning, the prefrontal neocortex part of our brain that's capable of being open, being curious, being creative. And so this step is important not just for facilitating the communication, but also for shifting the brain state that we're in to get to this place where we actually can be open and start to be in a place where we can come up with solutions and be receptive to what might have been going on for someone else, for example. So observations versus evaluations. So at the end, let's go through and role play again using nonviolent communication. Okay.
Can we kind of do it step by step, though?
Sure, yeah.
It'll help me.
Okay. So like we kind of just did with observations, right? Like you said...
So like I observe that that you are sending me links to LDS things that I don't want to hear.
Right.
Is that it?
Yeah, so even saying, like, I don't want to hear might be, like, interjecting your...
Because right now we're just talking about the other person's actions.
We're just talking about what happened in the physical form world.
You and Mom and
said.
Others are sending me stuff.
Actually, so it would be like, you told me that you asked me why I haven't responded to your emails. That's what it was, right?
Okay, yeah.
And I said... Those are bullshit. Those were my words. Those were your words, right? Like, I said in response to that, well, it's because you're selfish. And you said in response, whatever it was.
Yeah. I learned it from the best. Yeah. Okay, so just observing, just the facts.
Just observing,
and then the next step.
Stick to the facts, yeah. Then the next, it's not, and like it's easy to think of it as like progressing in order, but they are just 4 different components that can be accessed at different times throughout a communication process. But feelings versus thoughts. So this is a big one, and it's really hard for especially those of us that all of us who are disconnected from our bodies, because the important thing here is that feelings are happening in our bodies. And a lot of times it helps us to get in touch with the sensations that are happening in the body, like a tightness in my chest or like tingling in my arms or lightheadedness. Those can be all... Sorry, every time that happens...
burp in my...
Every time I'm like talking intensely.
Just vomit.
Okay, so it can, exactly. It can just anything can happen in the body. And then from there, connecting to the sensations that are going on in the body, we can start to name the emotions that are happening. And emotions are things like, I have a list right here. So aroused, eager, delighted, giddy, joyous, serene, tender, touched. So those are all examples of more pleasant emotions when our needs are met. And then thinking about feelings like anxious, dispirited, hostile, panicky, mystified, sullen.
Got a lot of emotions there.
Good emotions.
I think I experienced about 3 of those.
So starting to learn what our emotions are as opposed to the thoughts that we attach to our emotions. For example, I have a really good list of...
Look at you. You're so prepared.
There's so many good ones.
Relief Society president.
No, like, not at all. I would never have been a good Relief Society president. So sometimes we call these faux feelings, and sometimes they're called victim verbs. Words like, I felt attacked. I felt blamed. I felt unheard. I felt worthless. All of those are actually not emotions. They are thoughts, and they're always related to a judgment about someone else's behavior.
Interesting.
And we're interpreting their behavior to feel some way. But so we could take...
I feel attacked hearing that because I use that kind of language all the time.
I know. So do I.
So what do we do instead of that?
Like I said, it's all about coming into the body and identifying, like, what is really an emotion that isn't tethered to any sort of, like, judgment or thought or anything like that. Like, sadness is just an experience that we have that can just be this, like... It just is what it is. It's not necessarily related to anything.
Right.
Yeah. So that is feelings versus thoughts. So in our role play, instead of going down, like, I accused Tanner of being selfish.
Yeah, and I could have said something like...
So let's start from the beginning. Okay. So Tanner, I have sent you emails and with spiritual talks, and you haven't responded to them.
Yes, you have sent me talks, and I have not responded to them. Observation. And now I'm talking about...
How I feel. I feel...
I feel some tension in this area.
See, it's funny, but it's, like, real.
Yeah. It makes me feel a bit squeamish. I feel a bit
I think that's
tense.
A valid emotion.
I feel tense.
Yeah, I feel tense. I feel squeamish.
Okay,
Keep
so
going.
I haven't attached any...
So those are valid. Those are true emotions.
Okay. Is it okay to correlate, the stimulus with the input-output? Like, you did this, and when you do that, I feel tense?
When I see, so by saying when I see, when I hear, that's... and you're not referring to, like... vague trends that happen in relationships. You're referring to a specific action. When
I saw the message you sent to me, I felt tense. Because? Because I need, which we'll get to in a second. Okay, cool. Yeah. So how about we could just stop there and then we could keep going with our role play after we talk about needs. Yeah, let's do it. Okay. Step by step. So a really important concept is that feelings are always connected to, are you ready? Needs being met or unmet. They are not connected to specific actions, and they're not connected to judgments about what someone's saying or doing. They are always connected to needs being met or not met. Interesting. And just starting with that realization... I'm like kidding. Starting with that realization, you can use every single emotion to investigate which needs of yours are being met or unmet. Love that. Yeah. Rather than... Because, so you might say, no, I was really fucking pissed. Oh, I can't say that. You can. Oh, it's YouTube. It's our YouTube. I was really say whatever the fuck mad. You want. This isn't PBS. Okay, I was really flippin' angry when you like sent that email. Your thought is that you were mad about sending that email, but really your emotion was telling you that a deeper need was being met or unmet, and we could investigate and explore which of those needs they were. So to give an example of what needs are, Tanner, let me ask you, what is it? What are the qualities that make life wonderful and rich? Intimacy, vulnerability, compassion, awareness, growth. Cool. Yeah. Things like that.
Yeah, so I would say all of those could be considered universal human needs that we all have, that we all share. And also another important point about universal human needs is that they're not just, it's not just that I need intimacy for myself or like, let's say safety. I don't just need that for me. If I value safety, I value it for you, I value it for everyone. And so sometimes our needs can be unmet when it's not happening on like my whole family doesn't have safety because of whatever's going on, right? So, yeah. So,
and again, it's easy to confuse needs with feelings or...
Yep, all of them can get confused. Like feelings and thoughts get confused, feelings and needs get confused, needs and strategies get confused.
Yeah.
So this really is a process of investigation and a lot of times inner investigation, and it helps to just sit down and journal like, okay, what's actually going on right now?
It definitely requires a huge degree of mindfulness. It sounds like Buddhism applied to
communication.
To communication, yeah.
In a lot of ways, it definitely is. So
you're just starting with the awareness about how to think about the things that you're experiencing.
Yes, totally. It's all built on awareness. So here's an example of universal human needs to get you guys thinking. So freedom, space, spontaneity, play, fun, beauty, harmony, sex, food, water, creativity, discovery, to know and be known, to see and be seen, to be understood, integrity, congruence.
So if I'm feeling bodily anxiety during communication with overbearing, what I perceive to be overbearing family members or whatever, my need could be a longing for intimacy that maybe feels like it's not there as a result of faith stuff.
And maybe space as well. Like
space
your need for
well.
space, like for healthy intimacy, space and independence, those all go together, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So, yeah.
Okay, so
those are needs.
So identifying a need. So when I see just the facts, whatever they are, without my emotional interjections, I feel this thing, not what do I think about it, but I feel tension, I feel choking, I feel buzzy, whatever. Because I need space, intimacy, mutual respect, things like that. Okay.
There's no activity that's inherently need meeting. It's always our interpretation of those events that determines if our need was met or not. And the experience of a need being met is actually an internal experience that's happening inside of me. So it's not something that happens outside. So, I don't know. I think that was enlightening.
Then how does that bring us into... It ends with a request, of how we can approach the situation together.
So requests is, in my thoughts, is a little more simple. So it's requests versus demands. And the key here is that the biggest distinction between a request and a demand is that besides things like tone of voice and asking a question, is that if they say no, you accept that as readily as a yes. That's a big one. But then also requests, keeping in mind that we are shifting from habitual violent language that's life alienating to life enriching. With requests, you can like bring in an element of fun. Like, would it be fun for you if we so in our role play, it could be like, would it be fun for you if we, maybe you could, as the apostate, ask, like, find something, like, maybe that could be enriching between you and your sister that would be meeting both of your needs. Do you have something in mind?
No.
Maybe with your sister, she really values, like, this connectedness and, like, shared belief. Maybe you could focus, maybe you and your sister have both really been able to celebrate the beauty of, like, I love bringing in, like, art and music, poetry, literature. Like, there might be something there that you can have an overlap and be able to satisfy her need for that connection with you. You guys can start there with, like, the easiest thing that you could connect about. I don't know, like you could, that's a creative, this is us brainstorming.
Okay, yeah.
This is the creative
That's
part
cool
of
because
communication.
it centers on a shared value
Yeah.
that we both want to feel connected to each other.
Yeah.
And maybe this isn't the best way. Maybe we can connect on something that still has profound meaning for us, that still, you know, because as a Mormon, there's tons of things that you watch, listen to, and you're like, oh, I felt the Spirit during that. This is inspired. Even though it doesn't have the whole truth, it's inspired.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of inspired things out there, so maybe trying to focus on the inspired things.
Yeah, totally.
I like that.
That was one idea.
Cool.
Yeah.
What if you're interacting with a person who is just like so belligerent and not willing to compromise and like does not want to see or hear, just wants to keep imposing?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think that it's important to know when you're in a calm moment outside of any sort of interaction to decide what are your behaviors that you'll tolerate from yourself or others, because the chances are if someone else's voice is escalating, it's going to be tempting for you to escalate as well. Mm-hmm. And so knowing like, I will not do unproductive yelling. I will only do productive yelling.
Who gets to decide that?
I won't do name calling. I won't do, like you can pick what behaviors you like absolutely won't tolerate from yourself or someone else. And as soon as that starts happening, you can say like, actually, I think it's time for us to disengage and walk away. And then it might...
When you say these things, I feel...
ready to disengage.
Yeah. I request that you do not
talk to me anymore.
Is that the nonviolent approach to that?
Yeah, totally.
Cool. Yeah, I do.
I think you can practice nonviolent communication. You can figure out what your boundaries are with someone, and like if it's the safest for you to just interact with someone via email, like I really think when people are leaving the church, it's important to have a period of separation from your parents or from your family or whoever the main attachment figures are that are giving you guilt or pressure to be conforming to the church. I think that it's important to have a period of separation from them, and hopefully that's also cushioned with a lot of support from people who understand and who maybe have also left or who support you on your faith journey.
So that you can, reestablish your own healthy self-imposed boundaries,
yes.
Not the...
And this is for adults. Like as a teenager, you can't just necessarily like run away from home, but...
Yeah, faith crisis aside, I think that's just a part of growing up to, have that space and figure out who you are and what helps you operate the best.
Yeah, exactly. But figuring out like the dose of how much intensity with a very belligerent or intense person you can handle, and figuring out what boundary is okay for you and then operating from that boundary. So a really big part of nonviolent communication is practicing empathy, and it's a specific formula in nonviolent communication for how to do empathy. And a lot of times when we think we're practicing empathy, what we're doing is actually blocking empathy. So nonviolent communication's concept of empathy is going right into, are you feeling because you need? It's just... really staying focused on the feelings and needs that are going on at any one time. Mm-hmm. And so I have found that practicing that with someone who's really belligerent, just starting by saying, like as they're talking and as they're escalating, then just starting by saying like, are you feeling upset because you need understanding? Mm. And then just they might say no, and then you might try to figure out, you keep going and you keep asking a series of questions until you start to get resonated with where they are. And that's practicing empathy. And
I could see how someone could even be resistant to that line of questioning.
Yes,
because it
definitely.
can almost come across as condescending, like, what are you trying to figure me out? Like,
yes, definitely.
And it's like, trying to figure out something that works for both of us. But
right, exactly. It's true.
It's tough. We're in an interesting position because, again, we kind of we know both sides. We know how it is being confronted with something that could unravel your entire sense of identity, and your whole mental structure is programmed to resist that.
Right.
So interacting with somebody on the other side
who poses a threat.
It's just
threatening.
Yeah, and you feel it in your body, right? And so we can have empathy for that and recognize that, behind all those egoic guards that have been put up, there's a person there with needs who wants to be loved and respected and appreciated and share the beautiful things in life, you know?
Right.
And this is the kind of thing that will best help facilitate that rather than just constantly butting heads with people.
Yeah, definitely. And one last thing about nonviolent communication is that it's not just for managing conflict, even though it's remarkably wonderful for managing conflict. It also helps to just meet needs more deeply in a partnership and in friendships, and you can just practice it internally with your life, like what's going on with yourself and your internal communication between your inner selves.
Cool. So those 4 steps, again, loose steps.
Components.
Yeah.
Observations versus evaluations. Feelings as opposed to thoughts. Needs as opposed to strategies. And requests as opposed to demands.
All right.
And through it all, we practice empathetic listening and honest expression. That was kind of something I didn't say, but yeah.
And I know that when you follow these principles...
It is... No. That's true.
In my heart of hearts, with every fiber of my being. Of my bean. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on and talking to us a little bit about this. For people in the Salt Lake area, we can, if you want.
Yeah, we can put a link to. We're having 3 more study groups through the rest of the summer. So please come join us. We'd love to have you.
Yeah. Where can people find you specifically on the webs?
I'm falling out of the internet more and more.
Oh, okay.
My Instagram, you can put my handle, Kelli Case, but I don't post there anymore.
You are such a truly feral in the best way human. You're like IRL. It's hard. I'm always like, it's so hard to meet anyone these days. And Kelly's like, because you're just on the internet. You got to be out living life.
If you see me in person, come say hi. How about that? Sugar House Coffee, Whole Foods, Natural Grocer.
Natural Grocer, yeah.
Whole Foods. Cut that one out.
Is Whole Foods no good?
I mean, they're all corporate, Amazon Prime. But I regrettably find myself there on occasion. Right. Liberty Park.
Liberty Park.
Just delete that whole thing, please.
I know, it's kind of fun. All right, well, look for Kelly out in the wild at your local natural grocers. All right, well, have a good one practicing nonviolent communication. Bye.
Bye.